The Eagles' top brass just touched down in Indy for the NFL Combine, and Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman, they gave us some insights into their offseason plans during their yearly press conferences. Howie Roseman, though, let slip his #1 target this offseason, and a new report says some Eagles are trying to help him recruit that player. Also, a Philly insider revealed some disturbing rumors surrounding the Eagles' continued internal issues, but Nick Sirianni didn't seem too fazed when asked about it. I'm Thomas Mott. This is the Thomas Mott Show. Well, Sirianni Roseman's press conference, it just ended a couple of hours ago, and there's some really interesting comments on free agents to sign, an internal struggle inside the locker room, and re-signing key players, which, of course, I'll get in depth on. First, though, remember on yesterday's show how I broke down how some people think that Chiefs cornerback L'Jarius Sneed wants to be an Eagle this offseason due to the fact that he posted one Eagles emoji on an Instagram post? Yeah, well, at least there's some actual reporting today on this very issue from Tony Pauline in his new article where he states that, quote, 3 of Sneed's college teammates from Louisiana Tech who are presently on the Eagles roster are actively recruiting the cornerback to come to Philadelphia via text messages and other methods. Running back Boston Scott, defensive lineman Milton Williams, and tight end Griffin Herbert all played with Sneed at LA Tech and are pushing their former teammate to sign with the Eagles if he hits the free agent market. Now that's a little more like it. That's some actual reporting on getting Sneed to Philadelphia versus saying, hey look, he posted an emoji. That means he wants to come to Philadelphia. Now of course we've seen this in the past. Eagle players have lobbied for people to come to Philadelphia for years and years and years. Doesn't guarantee that they're actually going to come, but here's some real reporting that the Sneed to the Eagles link is somewhat legit. There is one thing to note, though. Like, let's say Sneed doesn't come to Philadelphia, and yet Howie still wants to sign a big-name free agent cornerback. Gotta remember, Chicago's Jalen Johnson is also a free agent and is coming off a season where he was higher rated, in fact, the highest-rated cornerback in the entire league according to Pro Football Focus. Now, either Johnson or Sneed would be a massive upgrade over what you currently have at the aging cornerback side, opposite of Darius Slay. Let me know if you guys prefer one or the other, whether it's Sneed, Johnson, or maybe somebody else. Also, shout out to the 32% of you guys who watch this show every single day and are also subscribed. The 67% of you guys who aren't subbed, I'm looking right at you. Now we talk about cornerback this, cornerback that, but it doesn't really matter unless Howie Roseman himself wants to address the main issue that is on the outside, and he told the media today during that press conference that ended just a few moments ago, he wants to be aggressive in free agency, and is that him mentioning the defense over the offense as an important piece to go after?
And I think we got a lot of work to do. I'm a little bit excited about kind of aggressively going after some future players that we did to start this off and bringing back at least one of our guys. So it's a good start, but we got a lot of work to do, and I'm excited to do it with the people that we get the opportunity to do it. I think you want to improve every area, every layer of your team. Certainly, I think when we look back at last offseason, we made a conscious decision to kind of put a little bit more resources onto the offensive side. Knew that we'd lose some good players on defense. I think looking back, certainly missed some of those guys. That starts with me and making those decisions. And so I don't think there's an area that, we wouldn't, be open to addressing.
It's starting to come together for me. Like between Howie Roseman's press conference a couple of moments ago just showed you that, and this new report on the Eagles players trying to get L'Jarius Sneed, they're going to get a cornerback in free agency. Is it going to be a big-name top guy like Sneed or Jalen Johnson? I don't know, but I do think they're going to make a heavy emphasis on the backside of this defense. Sure, hopefully linebacker, pass rusher at some point, but the backside of this defense seems to be priority #1 for Howie Roseman and company. Now, one headline that's not Sirianni related or free agent cornerback related, but it's from the NFL Combine, is confirmation finally from the Liberty line that the Eagles will indeed have a formal meeting with Clemson linebacker Jeremiah Trotter. And while the Eagles have a lot of formal meetings at the NFL Combine, the connection between, of course, Trotter Jr. and his father, the legendary Axeman, have left a lot of Eagle fans in my comments clamoring for 54 to come back to Philadelphia. And honestly, I'm all for it, like everybody is. The Eagles need another linebacker, especially due to the fact that Dean, often injured, a little bit undersized, and Zach Cunningham probably coming back, but also pretty mediocre when it comes to linebackers. I do need to highlight a little bit of caution, though, on the whole Trotter is the savior when it comes to linebacker. PFF has him anywhere between being a 3rd or 5th round draft pick, and the acquirers, Devin Jackson, had a really great write-up on him for those of us who didn't watch a lot of Clemson football, knowing that Trotter is very similar in build and play style to Nakobe Dean. Quote, Trotter, like Dean, 5'11", 229 pounds, was a smaller linebacker with excellent instincts and marginally better overall coverage as his prospect during the 2022 draft process. And that Fangio's dime packages asked linebackers to diagnose plays and routes over the middle of the field, which isn't a strong suit for Trotter. The NFL Combine, which starts later this week, could be a huge determining factor in some of Trotter's speed metrics, how smoothly he can flip his hips during his coverage drops. Now, I'm not anti-Jeremiah Trotter Jr., but still, you need to know these things whenever you read comments saying, draft Jeremiah Trotter Jr., he'll fix the linebacker position. I hope he does, and I hope they do, but he's not a perfect prospect, and if they were to go ahead and draft some other linebacker, third, fourth, fifth round, second round maybe. We still need to get behind whoever that could be. Now, there is another big story that dropped from the Inquirer's Marcus Hayes, conveniently just a couple of hours ago as well, before Sirianni is scheduled to hit the podium, and this article goes in on Nick Sirianni's culture inside Philadelphia. He apparently talked to one unnamed player who said that, quote, Sirianni and his staff played favorites. If you were a second-tier player or a recent addition, as the team staggered to its 1-6 finish, Sirianni and his assistants targeted you. If you were Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, or one of those legacy stars, your miscues went unmentioned or were excused. Hayes would emphasize that he didn't even ask questions about this issue. He wasn't trying to bring this up, saying, this information was offered unsolicited. I was asking an entirely different question. When asked if Brown's on-field conniptions in his 2-week media blackout were affecting the team, an accomplished veteran player replied, I don't know about that, but I will say it doesn't help when they treat two guys different ways. With that, he nodded at Hurts' empty locker. What about Brown? Yeah, I guess some guys can't do anything wrong. Again, it's Marcus Hayes. Take it with a grain of salt. But he would go on to emphasize that veteran players like Jason Kelce, Lane Johnson, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox were treated very differently than newer players like Jalen Carter or even young linebackers like Zach Cunningham. But to his credit, the article does make sure to emphasize that the blame for all of this does not go in terms of the players. It's not their fault for this alleged favoritism. Instead, he called it an indictment of Sirianni and his inability to control his team as a third-year coach who'd lost both coordinators to head coaching jobs with other teams. It's an indictment on first-year offensive coordinator Brian Johnson. He was a longtime family friend of Hurts and was his quarterback coach for 2 years with the Eagles. But when promoted last year, players said Johnson became reluctant to hold Hurts accountable. Johnson also, according to players, was intimidated by Brown. Now again, this is Marcus Hayes, and if you know anything about Marcus Hayes, he likes to stir the pot, and he's not necessarily anti-Eagles, but he was very much anti-A.J. Brown and called A.J. Brown out, especially during that 2-week media blackout, which we covered ad nauseum here on the channel a couple of months ago. But what he's saying here doesn't seem too far-fetched. I read this as Sirianni, and more specifically his coordinators, lost control, or they never really had control, and they couldn't handle being an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator trying to coach up experienced veterans versus rookies or younger players. They just couldn't figure out a way to balance that and make a cohesive unit. And that's probably a very common thing in the NFL for coordinators who don't last very long. If you can't get the respect from both the young and the old and demand it time and time again and hold both sides accountable, you're probably not long for this league, hence why Philadelphia immediately got rid of those two coordinators, including getting rid of Sean Desai halfway through the season, and now going with an experienced offensive coordinator who's been multiple places with a lot of success in Kellen Moore, and obviously the godfather of the Vic Fangio defense, Vic Fangio himself, who was known to be very, very tough on all of his players and not show a lot of favoritism. Now, Nick Sirianni, of course, was at the podium today, again, hours after this article dropped, and he was asked about the noise inside the locker room, and specifically A.J. Brown and the recent comments, and really, he brushed off the whole idea that there is any sort of internal issues, leadership issues, or anything wrong with Philadelphia.
A.J., like I've been telling you guys for a long time, not only is he, one of the best players I've ever been around, he's also one of the best leaders, and and he's going to do anything he can do to stick up for his teammates. That's why I admire. That's why he wears a C on his chest. And I think that if you're speculating, well, hey, what does it mean if he's yelling over here? Like, everybody doesn't. There's some people that when you're leading them, you yell at them, and there's some people when you're leading them, you put your arm around them, and there's some people there's somewhere in the middle, and like that's leadership. Also, is just figuring out what buttons to press with different guys. Not every person is you don't treat everybody the exact same, right? The standard is what it is, and you hold everybody to that standard, but you don't treat everybody exactly the same of how you get to that standard, how you correct that standard, or how you praise that standard.
I was a little surprised he wasn't specifically asked about this article. Like, there have been a lot of different articles, different media members reporting this and that internally going on in Philadelphia. Like, A.J. Brown is just one piece of all the rumors we've heard about Nick Sirianni not being a great leader, or Nick Sirianni letting people, get away with stuff, and yet he wasn't really asked that at the podium today. A little bit disappointing, but would he have given us a straight answer anyway? I think Sirianni's main focus today was to emphasize the culture is going to stay the same, at least trying to double down on what they think the culture should be. Here's him, which was one of multiple times during the press conference today, emphasizing what they want to be internally behind closed doors.
You go through, like, any time you go through a season, whether it's successful in your eyes or whether it's not successful in your eyes, you look on ways, opportunities to get better. And my job is to talk to every single player, and I've done that, talk to every single coach, what went right, what went wrong, what's your and you take that into account. You take everything into account, and you try to get better at doing those things. I think connection is our number one core value, and we there were things that we as a team, myself, didn't do a good enough job of last year, right? Maybe we leaned a little bit more into one category of our core values: connect, compete, accountability, football IQ, and fundamentals. Maybe at times I felt like I leaned maybe a little bit into one and not enough into the other. And so those are all things that you evaluate at the end of the year. And I look forward to, getting better and like I said to you guys before, like, we're not that far removed from having one of the best cultures, that any of us had ever been around. And that's, our players would say that, our coaches would say that, and it's just some tweaks that we need to do. But make no mistake about it, the things that, like, you can change how you communicate your culture. You can change the little ways that you do it with it. But at the forefront, we're never going to change what the culture is: connect, compete, accountability, football IQ, and fundamentals.
Now, if you're like me, you were hoping for a little bit of drama at the press conference today, like some sort of major bombshell to lead off the show that we'd all go, whoa, he said that. It didn't happen. Wasn't really expecting it, but I was at least hoping for it. Although on tomorrow's show, we got to get into Howie Roseman's comments on James Bradberry. There's some little tidbits on Hassan Reddick from both Roseman and Sirianni, and some Devontae Smith, Kellen Moore discussions that was all talked about today we couldn't fit on this show. So tomorrow's show is going to have that and a whole bunch more. I'm Thomas Mott. This is the Thomas Mott Show.